footy fans, and welcome. We are back with Tagged, thanks to Victoria, every bit different. And luckily we are back with our co-host Sarah Hoskins after a brutal injury. They had the whole league holding their breath. Hosko, good to have you back. How are you?
Thank you, Rowey. It is good. And what was my last name again?
Hoskins with an S, remember?
No, it is. It's great to be back. I have missed you guys for a couple of weeks. So again, thank you to K-Mac who's been filling in. She's done an awesome job. I missed all of the dress-ups. That's probably what I'm most disappointed about. But I am hanging by a thread, so to speak, or my hamstring is. So for context, in our Darwin game, I was running in a straight line. No one was there. And all of a sudden it felt like I had been shot and my poor hamstring went. So it's been a tough couple of weeks. Trying to sit down is a hard task.
That's
why we're standing up today. Take one for the team, thank you. But yes, I think I've avoided surgery, hopefully. So we're going to go a little bit of a rehab option for the next 3 months, and I'll go and see the surgeon, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be back out there in no time.
And obviously, Hosko, this is unfortunately the second time that this injury has reoccurred for you. So how are you feeling on it, like mentally, everything? Talk us through that.
Yeah, it is tough. Like, I think, I did struggle a bit throughout the season because I carried a bit of soreness. So, at some point something was going to give, and unfortunately it did. But, it is hard knowing that it's such a long journey through rehab and doing the same thing. But the one thing I am excited about is that, I've done this before, so I can do it better a second time round. So even just doing some of the little rehab things at the moment, it's, I know what to feel and I know what doesn't feel right. So
yeah, and it's like, obviously you had problems with your hamstring throughout the season. It's kind of like your body whispers before it roars. You nearly feel those things coming along, but it's so disappointing to see, and hopefully that you get back as quick as possible. I also believe that you've been camping at KB's house. Tell us, how she? I saw that in the game report that she also had trouble with her hamstring. Is it bad, good? How's she feeling?
Well, the poor thing, I think she's going out in sympathy because she kicked a goal. At least she got the goal, but straight away grabbed at her hamstring. But it was high up, right above, underneath your bum. So the poor thing, I think she's got a little bit of tendon soreness. Hopefully, I think she'll get a scan or have a little look over the next week with the physios.
So now it'll be your turn to look after her.
Yes, on the other side. Well, it has. So I have been staying at her house, and both her and Liv have been amazing. So I've kicked my feet up the whole time. She'll go and get me an ice pack, and then I'll get her one for her ankle. And it's been really good just having someone else around. And I'm so thankful and so lucky that I've got so much support in that space because it's been amazing. And I watch what KB does. Anytime she's had soreness or had issues with her ankle, I've never met someone more professional in my life. And watching how she gets herself up for games and that kind of thing, it's just been incredible.
It's amazing when things like that happen, isn't it, in a footy environment, and your teammates rally around you, and you're like, I didn't know I needed you as much as I do, and you become dependent on other people to help you. And
absolutely.
Even in the rehab journey now, like, you're going to need so many good people around you, but luckily you have that support in Richmond. But speaking of Richmond, how are you guys after yesterday? I think that was an unexpected loss really to Port Adelaide. So how are you feeling on that?
Well, the girls, they were obviously over in Adelaide, and I think disappointed is probably the right word because I think anyone coming into finals, you want to win finals, and your aim is to get to the grand final. So I think it was a disappointing loss for us because it wasn't the outcome that we wanted. And credit to Port Adelaide. I just think that they played an outstanding game, and for me, they're probably one of the biggest underdogs coming through this finals period. I know you've played them as well, but I watched from Melbourne, but watching the game, they were just relentless as well. So they had an answer for everything. I think even Richmond, we still played some really good football, and we would score goals. Caitlin Greiser got a couple. We had this momentum and run, but straight away Port Adelaide had a response. So and you look at their scoreline for the game, and they kicked 70 odd points, and I think that was one of their biggest scores. So I just think that their season has been building, and especially coming up against Hawthorn this week, they haven't played Hawks all season. So both teams in their first finals campaigns, and these are two teams that I think are arguably, you don't know a lot about them, but I think they've got so much excitement.
Yeah, definitely. I think with Port Adelaide, when we played them, I remember thinking, this is the highest pressure game that I've ever played in, I reckon. And that's why I think they're actually really well suited to Hawks, because when you get the ball, give the ball off, they pressure you straight away, they bump off the ball, and they make it really hard for you. And I think Hawks want to play this real run and carry, get the ball on the open side, type game, and I think that Port Adelaide will just stop them in their tracks. So I think it'll be a really interesting matchup, that game, but I definitely agree with you. They are for sure the underdogs.
So who's your call then? Do you reckon Hawks or Port?
I think that finals just brings this different energy, and I think that like generally you would say experience is everything in these big moments, but neither teams have that kind of experience with finals, so it'll be really interesting to see. But I actually think with the momentum that Port are building, that they actually might take Hawks at the weekend. And like you spoke about, the crowd over in Adelaide was amazing. They seem to have a really good fan base as well, and a lot of people getting behind them. Who's your call?
Oh, I want Port Adelaide to win. I think Hawks are playing exciting footy, but I want them to. After playing them yesterday, credit to them, and I think they are one of those finals teams at the moment that has this momentum, and you get this excitement about you. So go Port Adelaide.
And what about, when you talk about finals, what about Freo Adelaide? How do you think that game will unfold?
Well, that'll be fascinating, because I think Adelaide will win, and over in Adelaide, I think their home ground advantage, that it is an advantage. And we spoke about the crowds. I think the Adelaide fans in general, they're so different. So the atmosphere when you're actually playing, I feel like Freo has the same thing, but going over to Adelaide and playing, I think they'll have this one. You?
And Freo have also been unbeaten on the run though, and I think that they are a building team. I think like O'Driscoll, McCarthy, like all these players are playing so well at the moment, so I think they'll be really evenly matched. I do suspect that Adelaide will win the game because of experience again, and I think they know how to win in big finals and big moments. Even
the ruck battle there for both Adelaide and Freo, I think Mim Stroms is in she is in the best form of her career. She's arguably one of the best players in the competition at the moment, so I think that'll be a really fascinating one, is seeing which midfield battle can get on top.
And the game as well that took my attention at the weekend was the Hawks-Brisbane game. Craig Starcevich against Daniel Webster. I was really interested to see that matchup, because I was thinking in my head, I was like, Daniel Webster obviously has all the insight as to what Brisbane are trying to do and what they've been doing for the last couple of years. I don't essentially think they've been changing their system or reinventing the wheel. They just get better at it all the time. So I was really interested to see that, and I think, what did you think of that game?
Well, I think one of the biggest talking points to come out of it is Baldors. So you see in that moment, it was, both players look like they're going for the ball, and unfortunately Baldors has jumped at the same time. You can kind of see her arms go up, and then she's hit Ainsley Kemp. So I think the question is Baldors going to get rubbed out? I think, it's a really sad one, but you look at Baldors, who's one of Brisbane's best players and really influential, and she's potentially going to miss a couple of games.
Yeah, that's a really hard one. Like, yourself, sometimes when you're in the heat of the moment in a game as well, momentum can carry you through. But yeah, with her hands going up, I think that is a big talking point.
Yeah, well, she didn't opt to bump either, so that's the thing. Hands are open. I don't know. That's a really hard one. I just think the entire season, whether it's been across the men's or the women's competition, is that these, concussion incidences and bumps is so hard as a player to understand what you can and can't do or how you do it. But at the end of the day, you're protecting the player.
Yeah, definitely. And the other team who got knocked out obviously this week too is Essendon. Looking at the game, Maddie Press-Parker's had quite a quiet game, which is...
Well, she hurt her glute,
Did you see? No, I didn't miss that part. Here we go.
She had a quiet game, so obviously looked at the stats, but she was ruled out because... So she did. She took this... It was a really innocuous incident where she's caught the ball and she's landed on... she just planted one foot, but straight away has grabbed it, sort of her glute hip area. So she tried to do a little test, but she looked like she was in agony and really hard to come off the ground. So didn't go back on after that.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's such a big part of Essendon's game plan. It starts and ends with Maddie. And what about Essendon getting knocked out? Did you suspect that they would get further, or?
Well, I think when they have their full team in, they are quite strong. I think that's a thing. Freo as well. They had a really strong side and they were playing well. So, given the conditions as well, I think, they were dropping like flies, and you see some players, I think Jackie Vaught at the end of the game, she went down with a calf cramp, and the camera zoomed in on it and her calf just looked like it was pulsating as well. So I think there were so many players that had little niggles and injuries too, and you just look when you lose some of your best players in the team, you have to shift some magnets, so it's not obviously not playing. But I think that is the best part about finals, is those teams that have the depth to cover that sort of stuff, like a North Melbourne, for example. Yeah. So, you know, North at the moment, they've been premiership contenders and probably the flag favourites all season, right?
Do you think that anyone can take North and knock them off?
I do, because... And you know, I feel bad for saying it, but North have choked in the past. So they have, when it has come down to finals times, that is their biggest weakness, or had been their biggest weakness. So the question is, can they stand up and play that? They did to Adelaide. They took it to Adelaide the other week, but you did see patterns in their game where they looked weaker, but it was a shift in momentum. So, you know, I think that's the beauty of finals, is that anyone can win. If you've got the momentum and you have a great team, you could, you know, roll someone in one day.
Yeah, do you think that if you were to look at any of the teams that are in finals at the moment, what team do you think would be the most likely to beat North Melbourne?
I think it would be... I want to say in Adelaide, because they nearly had them.
Yeah.
You?
I think it would probably be, for me, it's Brisbane. When I look at the matchup of that game, I kind of go Brisbane. I know, like, round one was a washout, North versus Brisbane, but also there would have been so much emotion riding on that game from the previous grand final. But I think for me, it's like the physical dominance and athleticism of Brisbane, for me, in finals really holds up, and it's like you always see them come to the forefront in the last quarter. So that would probably be they seem like the most evenly matched team to them, I think.
So if I asked you the two games that are coming up this weekend, Adelaide, Freo, who's your pick?
Adelaide, Freo. I'm going to go Adelaide.
And Hawks and Port.
I'm going to go, as much and all as I love Aileen Gilroy and Anya McDonough, and they're going to hate me for this, I'm going to go Port.
Oh, okay. All right, they're the underdogs. Done. Well, what about Emma Carney? Does she make a return?
I think Emma Carney will not make a return this weekend. I think they maybe might push it, but for me, I'm like, I think that North maybe, you know, they have a bit of extra time. If they can buy her a tiny bit of time, and hopefully they get to a grand final, that she can play in that.
And coming back from a serious hamstring injury as well. So
like,
it was,
you know, what
high
the
grade.
experience of that is like.
You just don't want to risk it.
Do you want to risk it, or are you like, oh, we push it, but then,
But if you don't need to, I think if you don't need to, even for them to have a week off, and that would have been so important.
But
so
then
knowing
from the
that they had a double chance.
For example, like, you would be thinking, I want to get a game in if we are to get to the grand final, because you know the rustiness of coming back from injury, you're like, you kind of need a game. So like, I feel like the players always pushing in those situations. The medical team is like, hold on.
Oh, she would. And Emma Carney as well, I think, knowing what she's like on the field, she'd be itching to get back out there. But I think, you know, you wouldn't take any risks, and knowing that you've got potentially a grand final coming up, you wouldn't risk it now.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, speaking of the finals and the teams now who are knocked out, this is the funny time of year where there's exit meetings, there's players getting delisted, there's players deciding to maybe potentially trade, there's people are having conversations with clubs as to where they might go next, or whether they'll stay, or longer extensions of contracts. There's a lot of funny things happening, and you always feel that kind of through the end of the season. There's this like people fighting for positions versus people wanting to win games, and like everyone's kind of coming from a different agenda. But this week now we have our exit meeting. So to describe to the audience what an exit meeting is, you go in and you have medical meetings to assess where your body's at, performance meetings in terms of GPS metrics, then you also have your performance in terms of stats and how you've actually performed, and you really can't hide in those situations. And then you have your head of women's sport, and then your coach and line coach. So a full assessment goes into the end of season, which can be daunting for players, because they also get told if they're going to be delisted at that time, if they've done well. But really the facts don't lie, and you can't say, if they show you all this information and you try to say, I thought I had a pretty good season this season, they're like, well, this shows maybe you didn't. So it's a bit of players can be quite anxious at this time of year.
It is. I feel like it is an awkward one too, because sometimes you go into the club and there will be players that, you know, have uncertainty around contracts. So if you're delisted, you find out, and then you're not back at the club.
Pack your locker.
There's a number of players that will get told that they don't have a contract, but we can't guarantee anything, because when the trade period comes up, there's certain players that will be used as trade bait or be used to trade. So I think that it's the hardest part as a player and as a teammate in these periods, is to know how do you best support your teammates, or those players that have either been delisted. Sometimes you don't find out until a day or two later.
But it's also like, it's that feeling of them being your teammates, but then them being your friends, and then being like, they're just not going to be in this environment anymore. Like, it's actually such a sad thought. And it's the same with people who retire as well at this time of year. You're like, God, it's been such a good journey, and you just reflect on it all. But also, when I think about it from a coach's perspective, it has to be one of the hardest parts of the job, because they have to sit down and go, we've built this respect, this trust, we've been working together for so long, I put so much time into you, and vice versa. And then they have to say, here, we're letting you go, and your work here is done.
But you have to think of it like a business, I guess, because it is. We're playing football, and at the end of the day, you enjoy doing that, but it is a business. So it is running a business. And that's the hard part, though, because it is a business, but there's so much emotional attachment to sport as well. And when you get treated like a business, you normally, it's like, the sport's all about this feel, it's like we do it for each other, but then there is the business side of it, and it is completely rootless. And then you're like, as a player, you need to look after yourself, and you need to really look after that in order to continue to get contracts. But the other side of it is like, you always need to bring your team with you. And it's a bit of a funny one, because it's definitely, you find at these times of the year, you're like, God, it really is ruthless. But so yours is today, yours is after this,
Mine
isn't
is
it?
today, so
You've still got a contract though, haven't you?
I do. I'll pack my lockers.
You think you're doing all right?
Kick me out.
I feel like you're going to be okay, don't worry. All right, Rowey, it is time for our tagged list. Thanks to Victoria, every bit different. Now, I am disappointed because I have missed some cracking weeks and some cracking tags. We've had the steamboats in Echuca. I know I haven't been there, but I will go in the off-season. And there is just so much that there is to do in Victoria. And that's what I love about our tagged list, is I've lived in Victoria my whole life, and yet there is still so much stuff that I haven't done. Now, there is one space that I want to talk to you about, and that is Queenscliff. So have you been to Queenscliff?
I think I've been around that area, but can you just describe to me in a geographical sense?
I can.
Yeah.
Oh, like I said, I'm not great.
How far outside Melbourne?
It's about 90 minutes.
Yeah,
or 60, 90 minutes. It depends on the drive. But it is, so you imagine the coast, or like you've got Mornington Peninsula, and then you have the other side of the coast.
Yeah, so it's the other side of the coast.
Yes, it's the surf coast side. So Queenscliff is right at the point as well. So I have an embarrassing story that happened a couple...
Surprise.
So I finished commentating in the men's season, and I was down at GMHBA, which is close, so it's Geelong side. That's about 30 minutes. Queenscliff is 30 minutes from Geelong. And I finished, and I punched in my maps to go down to Mornington, which is where my home is. So it should take about an hour and a half. And so I just got in the car and I started driving. But this is after a football game, packed crowd. And I'm going, this is a bit odd. I got 10 minutes into my drive, and then there wasn't many people driving around me. I didn't realise that I had driven all the way to Queenscliff because my maps was telling me to get on a ferry, but it was midnight.
I honestly don't think you saying that it was dark is an excuse for you making that much of a mistake.
Well, I didn't realise. I got to the ferry. I got to Queenscliff Ferry. No, because I'm sitting there singing and dancing in the car, and I was tired, and you just got to listen sometimes. And ignore that. So what we are talking about is gin tasting at the Queenscliff Distillery. Now, do you like gin?
Yes, I do like gin.
Yeah. Really?
Well, just a bit. Just in that situation, that's perfect, because all it is gin tasting. It's not like you have to drink it for the night. It's just a little bit of a sip, and I think that's a perfect experience. Well, so when's that on?
Queenscliff Distillery is known for their dry gin. So it's a very famous dry gin. Yeah. They won bronze at the Australian Distilled Spirits Awards. Mm-hmm. So it is an amazing place that you can go down, do a lovely tasting, and you have an absolutely amazing day out. Now, I would highly recommend doing it with friends, because coming up to the end of season, I feel like now that the season's done, you can have a couple more drinks at the end.
Yeah, but I I've actually think I've heard of that before. It's on, isn't it, on Saturdays between 11 and 2.
It is.
So it's a perfect time to just kind of go down. It's during the day, enjoy it with a bit of sun. So yeah.
Then you can jump on the ferry and go across to Mornington if that's what you want to do.
Exactly, yeah, 100%. I need to go down that way though. I think now with it being the off season during like December and January, I feel like most people get out of Melbourne and go down that direction versus staying in the city.
Yeah, well, you do, and it's so easy because you can do a quick little day trip, or you just go down and stay, or you get a little Airbnb. I think that's the best part, is that, you know, Melbourne has so much to offer.
Yeah, no, definitely. But the place that I'm going to tag is in Melbourne, around the corner from my house. It's called Lenny's Wine Bar. Have you heard of it?
No.
So it is now.
Sounds like my place
again. Now that it's off season, we don't drink too much generally, but here is a place where it's a gorgeous ambience. It is. What are you laughing at?
Nothing. Keep going. Just keep going.
It's a gorgeous ambience, and it also has this. Here we go. The language barrier is back, and it has this gorgeous focaccia bread and cheese board, and there's like games. You can sit down. Hosko, we just have some quality time. I think we have a lot of things to catch up on. Regardless of footy, we have a lot of like off-field chat we need to catch up on.
We do.
Perfect for us.
So when are we going?
We can go there on Saturday.
Okay. Yeah. I have a question though. So is it the kind of place that you would go on a first date, or a double date, or the double date that never existed?
Brought back to dates. Yeah, that date. See, I told you that guy fell in love. I'm sorry. You just weren't enough in the end, unfortunately.
Still not.
So it would be the perfect place for a double date. Yeah, we could organise that, I suppose. Yeah,
done.
Blind one.
A blind one, great.
Yeah. So actually, speaking of dates, where would be your perfect first date?
Oh, look, I love like, you know, a botanic garden style or something. You know, a nice little wine bar. I don't know. I like activities
I can't
too.
imagine the chat you'd be coming up with on the first date. The person would be like, "What is this?"
I know. No, I think a wine bar is a good place to start. If you don't know someone, it depends if you know them, but you go and have a nice little casual drink. I love the atmosphere when you got a little bit of music, or, you know, nice little nibbles, and you pair some food with a nice wine.
Yeah, definitly. Well, Hosko, we could continue to talk about dates because there's so many avenues we could go down there. But I think that's it for today. I think we've got through it all.
Well done. Thank you to everyone. It's great to be back as well. We'll be back again next week. Remember to give us a little like, a follow. Join us next week, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Get ready for all things AFLW. Join myself, Sarah Black, Gemma Bastiani and Lucy Watkin on Credit to the Girls as we break down the latest AFLW results. Tune in Mondays and Wednesdays, or listen as a podcast anywhere.